Hi everybody, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today is our next episode of Working Our Scraps Off. I'm really looking forward to showing you this quilt block. That's what we're doing this month, is a fun, geometric, and a modern quilt block. It's called 4 Squares in 1. So get out your scraps and get ready to sew. So as you can see, I have my green scraps out. I felt like doing green because this video is going to be released at the end of February. So just in time for St. Patrick's Day in the middle of March. So I thought it'd be fun to do something in green. And I don't think I've used green yet. Maybe I have a little bit in some of my Working Our Scraps Off videos. So you get out your green scraps if you want to do it in green, but you can do this block in any color. It's very easy. It's a great big, bold graphic block. It's 12.5 inches square when finished. It's very easy to put together too, and you'll see that in a minute. So before I show you what fabric you need to cut for this block, I just want to show you the block in action. This was a quilt I did for my February Island Batik Ambassador project. It's a row by row, and here it is. This is one of the blocks in it. You can sort of see right here, there's your square and a square. There's the main sort of bullseye square, and then you have these two background sides, and then another square here. So it's a little bit of an off-center block, a little bit different, adds a little bit of interest. But there it is inside a quilt. I can show you more. Like I said, this was a row by row. So here you go, there's another version of it. You can see that. So that gives you an idea of what the block is that we're going to be making today. So I've moved the quilt over here a little bit. I'm going to reference back to the block just so you know what fabrics I'm talking about when I'm telling you what sizes to cut. So for fabric A, and fabric A is going to be this square here and the center square, you need 1 square of fabric cut 2.5 inches. Let me move these out of the way. And 1 square cut 4.5 inches square. So that's what you need for fabric A, those two pieces there. For fabric B, and that's going to be this ring right around here, you're going to need 2 strips cut, or they're like rectangles, 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches, 2 of those, and then 2 strips cut 1.5 inches by 4.5 inches. And that again is for fabric B, and that is that ring there. For fabric C, which is this larger dark ring here, you're going to need 4 strips, and 2 rectangles or 2 strips are going to be cut 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and they're sticking together. And then you'll need 2 strips cut, let me move this a little bit, 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And again, that's fabric C, and that's that darker ring here around here. And that was 2 strips 2.5 by 4.5, 2 strips 2.5 by 8.5. And last but not least, you're going to need 2 strips or 2 big rectangles cut 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And that's fabric D, or in my case in this quilt, it was my background fabric. And those are these right here. Let's see, I'll put those there so we can see them. So there you go. That's all you need, the 2 strips of fabric D, and then the rest that we went over earlier. And that will make one big, bold, geometric, modern block that measures 12.5 inches square. So let's get started. So I've adjusted the camera a little bit. That way hopefully you can see the pieces a little bit better. Here's that first piece. It's the 2.5 inch square. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to add one of those. This is your fabric A. You're going to add one of the strips that was 1.5 by 2.5 inches of fabric B to one side of that square. And you're just going to sew a 1/4 inch down the end. And when that's done, you're going to add the second one to the opposite side, and I'll show you how that gets done. All right, so this is how this turns out and looks. Very easy to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add, hopefully you can see that. Unfortunately, the green background of the cutting board, we're going to add one of those longer strips of fabric B to this end. See how we're making like a box, a square? and then the other one to this end. Now, before I do that, I just ran out of my bobbin thread, so I need to fix that, and I'll be right back when my machine is all set up. All right, so here you can see where I've added the next layer out. So you have the center and then the fabric B on the outside. Now we're going to add fabric C, which is this. So the first thing you want to add are the two shorter ones, and these were 2.5 by 4.5. And if you sewed right and you have that 1/4 inch seam, you should have this square, this part here should measure 4.5 inches square. You may need to square it up a little bit if you do, but I'm going to go ahead and sew these on, and I'm going to sew the two small ones on opposite ends like we did here before. In fact, I'm going to add them on this end where we had added the shorter ends. If you can see the seams there, I just sort of like to do that. So we'll add that to that end, and then another one to the other end, and then we'll add the longer ones. So we have a larger square that's going to measure 8.5 inches. All right, you can see it coming along here nicely. We're building up that big bold square, like the bullseye square, I guess you'd call it. And now you're going to add those 2.5 by 8.5 inch strips on these two ends to keep that square going. All right. And again, we're always just using that 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so here we have this big square. This should measure 8.5 inches square. I love it with the green. It's really pretty. It's totally different than the brown ones that I did for that quilt. So the next thing you're going to do before you're not going to add anything else to this right now. You're going to set this aside, and you're going to take one of your background or your fabric D, whichever you want to call it, fabric D square, the rectangles that were 4.5 by 8.5 inches. And you're going to add that square of fabric A that you had that was 4.5 inches square. You're going to add that to one of the short ends, like so. And then you're going to take this square that you made, and you're going to add the other rectangle to one end, like so. And you're just going to sew that to one side on the long end. All right, so these are sewn up now. Now I'm going to press them, and I want to show you a real quick pressing tip. I'm going to press to this rectangle on both of these. That way when I'm sewing them together, they'll nest really nicely. So I'm going to press those really quickly. All right, so there you see where I press them to this polka dotted fabric. And this way, because the last thing we're going to do is sew this strip now to this part of the block. I mean, this is a very easy block to make, and it packs a real nice graphic punch. So we're going to flip that over, and when I say nesting, now that these are pressed to opposite ways, the only seam we have to worry about matching is right here, and I just nest those two seams together so they fit, they sort of butt up against each other. And I will pin, and that's the only place you have to pin on this block too. That's what I like about this block. It's nice and easy, and if you've watched my videos before, you know I'm not a fan of pinning. I do, but I just, it's not my favorite part of the process. So now we're just going to make sure everything fits, it all measures correctly. I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down this long side, and we'll be done with this block. All right, here we go. Here is the block. I love it. It's just a little bit different. It's off-center block, a little quirky, a little modern, and it's a great scrap buster. Here it is all in greens. You could make all maybe rainbow squares. The sky is the limit with this one. All right, so here I am. I'm back. I wanted to show you one more time this fun block. Fun and very easy block and great for scrap busting. I call it 4 squares in 1. The only seam you have to worry about is at the very end when you're sewing this part together right here. But other than that, it's very simple sewing as long as you maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So here it is all in greens for St. Patrick's Day. If you wanted to make an all green quilt, you could. It would be lots of fun. And then let me show you again what it looked like. Here are 2 versions. In my row by row quilt, lift it up a little bit. There you can see there's a darker one, and then here's one with lighter. You can see how you can just really play with the fabrics. And in this one, I use the same background fabric in all of the blocks. So it really makes those squares pop. It makes them, you can really see those squares. Now you don't have to do that if you're making a whole quilt, you know, whatever you want to do. This row by row was again my February Island Batik project, and I do show you I did a show and tell of this whole quilt, and there's another block in here that I actually show you how to make on that show and tell if I can find it. Let's see. Let me see. It might take me a second to unfold this. Well, oh, of course it's on the other side. Here we go. Let's see if you can see it. I show you how to make this fun sort of double arrow one. Another one that's very geometric and modern, and again, very easy to do. I'm going to show you how to do over time. I'm going to show you how to make all the blocks in this quilt. I have a picture up on the screen of the entire quilt. This is just a fun and easy row by row quilt. And again, like I always, my favorite projects, let me put this away. Like all my favorite projects, it's a scrap buster, which I love. Although that was highlighting a beautiful new fabric line that they have called Interurban. But here it is with all my scraps in green. And wouldn't this be pretty, maybe rainbow colors, like you could do green and red and purple or whatever. So this is it. This is our Working Our Scraps Off episode. I can't remember what episode now. I think it's 11 or 12. I'm not sure. I have to go double check. I think it might be 12 because we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the Working Our Scraps Off series, my YouTube series, where every month I bring you a free and small little scrappy project tutorial to work on. I also have a fun and very active Working Our Scraps Off Facebook group, so head over there. The link is in the description of the video. I hope you'll join us and show off your scrappy projects. A lot of times people will show off their versions of projects that we've made here on the YouTube series. Make sure also to hit that subscribe button. I love new subscribers. Thank you so much. And also hit that bell. That way you know you'll get notified every time I post a new video. I do mostly quilt tutorials, free patterns, that sort of thing. A lot of tips, tricks, that kind of thing. So thank you so much for watching and have a great day.